it. You know what I did not see, everyone, is that little square remote that adjusts the camera angle. Does that happen to be over there?
No,
Thanks.
but I bet we can find it. Oh, there it is.
Oh, my gosh. Never mind.
Plain sight is so the hardest to find.
I love your outfit. Thank you.
I think always just.
We love fall. I love fall. All right. Go. We renamed myself.
Someone's Heather Bear's Lowe's would have been here. Yeah, weird. I think that is.
If anybody's on yet, so.
Have you guys had many people join?
No.
Parts.
Yeah.
Most interesting reports according,
I don't think that is not the takeaway.
according to the general population. I did not say that that is my own personal belief.
I mean, maybe they're all just catching the YouTube. What do you
Maybe.
Watch the replay.
Yeah,
It's not nearly as controversial.
all right, so I will begin by calling this meeting to order. And seeing that we have a quorum, we can continue. Heather, if you wanna take it away with our meeting procedures.
Sure thing. Where did the share screen button go?
Not any EAB meeting if we didn't watch Heather wrestle with trying to find the
Sure.
various screens.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Sandine. I'm serving as the technical host for tonight's meeting. Thank you for your grace and patience as we all deal with last minute Zoom updates and all the other tech stuff that happens to me regularly. The city is engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement process, please visit that website, bouldercolorado.gov/services/productive-atmospheres. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during the meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any other person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. Because we do not have registration for open and public comment tonight, you can indicate you would like to participate by using the raise hand function. The raise hand button is in the participant box, which can be found in the menu by hovering over the top or the bottom of your screen and then clicking on the participant icon. When the box opens, you will see the raise hand button at the bottom. By clicking that button, you can indicate you would like to participate in open or public comment. If you've joined us by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand.
Great, thank you. Next, I will make a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting. Thank you, and a quick, all in favor? Yeah, great. With that, we can continue on to our meeting. Do we have any public participants? Seeing none. Okay. I'll hand it over to Jonathan if he wants to give us a tee up here.
Yeah, happy to. Good evening, board members. For the record, Jonathan Cohen, Climate Initiatives. Knowing that today being November 6th was going to be kind of a busy day for many people, wanted to keep your agenda somewhat light and give you a really good update on one of the topics that I think has come up a good number of times in the last couple of months, which is our nature-based solutions work within the department, specifically the Cool Boulder campaign. And I know it's a subject that you're familiar with, but thought it was a really good time to bring an update, allow you to talk to some of the key staff that run a lot of that coalition of city organizations, well, the city and community-based organizations focused on nature-based solutions and climate. and let you ask some questions on where we are today, where we're headed, and really just to give you a quick update on where we're at. So I would be delighted. I don't remember if you've been to the board before.
I have, but I
It's been a while.
think I don't remember if I've met you two. I don't think
I don't
so.
think so.
Yeah, I have, in February last year, we came
Oh,
and
that's
talked
right.
about this.
That's right.
And then I only came and spoke a little bit about heat islands.
Did you, wait, was it 2023 or 2020?
2023.
It was,
I came in
okay.
February 2023, yeah.
See how time
Or
flies.
2023.
Crap.
I don't even know.
Well, I'll turn it over to Heather, and if you'll introduce yourselves for the record, and then you can go ahead and roll.
Yeah, and where would you all like us? I mean, I know this is a small group and informal, is like from here, okay?
this is
Okay, great. So I'm Heather Barons-Loza. I'm a program manager on the Nature-Based Climate Solutions team of Climate Initiatives. That's Caroline.
I'm Caroline Peterson. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Civic Spark AmeriCorps Fellow serving with the climate department on the Nature-Based Climate Solutions team. And I'm in my second service term, so I've been with the city for over a year.
Yes, cool. Very excited to have her back. So I could probably talk at this point about Cool Boulder ad nauseam for like 3 hours. So we attempted to keep this to a theme.
And we're excited to hear your questions and like have a discussion too. So.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of spaces where and if you have any questions, we go, please just jump in. I did want to provide, I spoke with Brett Karen, our team lead before this, to see if he had any quick talking points. And this is more from the city team end than it is Cool Boulder end necessarily, but we just wanted to point out that the EAB has been asking about a heat strategy for a while. We just wanted to let y'all know you've been heard. It took time, but this is now a priority in the citywide strategic plan. And this point two, that's a work item for our team to convene a citywide team around this. And some of this will be based on work that's coming out of our team. That's been a recent heat assessment. One we did through Resilient Analytics, which deals with heat and vulnerability. And there's of course broader work happening around the city around vulnerability, but we're really excited to pull this together. And this and another big thing coming up is landscape codes. So codes are one of the most important mechanisms we have to impact landscapes around the city, and mostly prompted or largely prompted by a law coming down from the state on non-functional turf. Cities all up and down our region are assessing their codes, and the city is also, Boulder is also in the middle of a large code and ordinance review and update around this. And that turf law is coming into effect in 2026. So this is happening at the moment. And Brett did suggest that either one of these topics or both of these would be great to bring to you all somewhere in Q1 next year, probably to talk about more in depth when we know more, but they are starting to roll. So that's really exciting. We have a code kickoff meeting tomorrow, actually. So we're pretty excited about that. So yeah, update from our team, just forecasting maybe some topics that we'd like to bring by.
What is the non-functional turf law?
Sure, so I actually couldn't tell you the nitty-gritty of the full law, but the state is assessing due to water use, how in new development, non-functional turf will not be allowed.
What is non-functional?
So in this case, and that's actually a big question, is how we define non-functional. That's a question we're kind of asking ourselves too. But when we think about like Kentucky bluegrass, when you think about a massive open space that's just being watered full of Kentucky bluegrass, that people are paying a bunch of money to water and a lot of water is going into. And that's just it, you know, it's not serving a purpose as an athletic field or as someone's small lawn, that could be considered non-functional. And Jonathan, I don't know if you have any more you want to say.
Yeah, sure. It was codified through Senate Bill 51 in the last session, and it pertains to government operations. So right now it is state government and municipal governments and how they think about existing facilities and what a plan is to remove non-functional turf and not putting in new grass or new turf in any new development.
Only for like public facilities?
Correct.
No for,
Correct.
so like city-owned parks and stuff like that too, or?
Well, so there are some exemptions when it relates to things like ball fields, when it relates to operations and in certain places where there already is grass for certain reasons. And so I'm happy to send you the bill language that was.
What's left? What will be left, yeah?
What do you mean?
Like, if,
Well, private properties, of course.
Right, so this bill includes also private property.
It does not.
It does not.
You're saying what other examples of non-functional turf anywhere?
Yeah, like, if
What
it's,
actually
I mean, nobody's
would
watering grass just because, right? Or are they?
Yes.
Where?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know, these are small spaces, but like in between the street and stuff, like there's all this
East fence.
weird.
Some
Yeah.
weird
Rights of way.
high side of highways, like they'll have like
Yeah.
nice turf grass randomly that no one ever goes on.
And a lot of our drought rules are based around the baseline use of like turf grass. So there's just a lot that goes into the water calculations and water use around those places that are turf that like kind of no one's really using. And we would love to see them converted into things like pollinator habitat, when possible and when it makes sense.
This law just applies to new developments, right? So it
Mhm.
doesn't mandate that like.
Correct, you don't have to worry
non-functional
about
Get taken out, it's just you can't add more.
And it's certainly, it's triggering a lot of code updates around the state, in terms of, I know, I think Longmont has already gone through one with a consultant and we're kind of kicking off and trying to make it a very comprehensive one. Yeah, from the city team aspect, and I'll be really interested to see how this will trickle out through Pool Boulder. But just to start, we wanted to remind you of what Pool Boulder is, why we're doing it, and why we even have a nature-based climate solutions team. Nature-based climate solutions are working with ecosystems. About a third of our excess carbon in the atmosphere is from land degradation. So when we think about the teams on climate initiatives, having and the pillars we have about fighting climate change, ecosystems is part of it. And one of the most important ways to do nature-based solutions is with community. We have things we can do on our own land, but for example, about 80% of our tree canopy is on private property. So if we're thinking about the community as a whole, cooling the entire community, working with the entire community, we also have to have a nexus for working with community. We also have to do so in an equitable way, so people are not inequitably advantaged via this, and the folks who need it the most have a chance. And Cool Boulder has kind of become a structure for that, which is really exciting. When we first started, I feel like this was kind of an experiment. So it's really fun to think back on where we've come and what else come out of this. There's been a little bit of branding around nature-based climate solutions. So we've got these three sort of logos around our action areas. This is what we're trying to rally around. So connect to canopies, kind of a given, but thinking about how we connect shade and healthy living canopies across our city. And that can also include shrubs. So just various ways of shading the ground and keeping that ecosystem up high, alive. Pollinator pathways is kind of our charismatic way of saying biodiversity. And we're still working a lot on our biodiversity messaging. We were running kind of on the idea that biodiversity might not be as understandable to people as, say, everybody understands it. People know what butterflies are, people are excited about pollinators. I do think there's a broader understanding of biodiversity out in the community than we originally thought at first, but it can be sometimes hard to tie biodiversity to climate change. So it's been an interesting journey so far, and I'm excited to do it more. But pollinator pathways, another second to pollinators, also pathway, thinking about how we connect things across the city. One good example of this is that honeybees, they feed in a swarm. They can fly a long, long distance, or about 1,000 species of native bees kind of hop, and they often feed in solitary. So they need connected spaces to move around and actually get enough food, and can be severely disadvantaged if there's a lot of honeybees because they can range far and wide. So one thing we can do is create small patches that kind of range over the city. Absorbent landscapes is kind of our slowest growing, but one of my favorite because it deals with water, but we leaned into the absorbent landscapes language because it's not just for water, it's also for carbon. Carbon is a resource, it's just in the wrong spot. So the healthier and more hydrated soil we have, the more carbon it can hold. And having carbon there is just critical to having healthy ecosystems. So that's what we're rallying around as a structure for the public, and also interestingly for ourselves, it's sort of how our team is made up in a way on the city end. I came in as more the absorbent landscapes person. Brett Karen represents our connected canopies. And then we have Rella Abernathy and Adrian Carper, who are working on the pollinator pathway and also the integrated pest management program. But it's been a good structure so far that's held up, which is kind of nice to see. I did want to start with, I think maybe the last time I would have come, I would have mentioned that, hey, we have a steering team. But I thought it might be nice just to introduce you all to who's on our steering team. And I'm very proud of this acronym, the Action Coordination Team, or the ACT. Xerxes Societies through Steve, EcoCycle with Marty. Devin is representing the Chamber of Commerce. Angie is in charge of the Play Foundation, and Play is holding a lot of our tree work. So in the Tree Trust, a lot of that more community-based work sort of moved out of our team into the Tree Trust, as did one of our last interns, which was great.
I forgot to add Daniel, sorry.
No, it's okay, no worries. Daniel is also with Play, as is Mike Reichert. And then Andrea Montoya, if any of you know her, she's running the Pollinator Advocate Program and been a really influential community organizer around this. Amy Yarger is a horticulturist at the Butterfly Pavilion, and then Tim Beal is working on sustainability at Boulder Housing Partners. And these folks have been really the brain trust of Cool Boulder from the get-go. And it's really wonderful to have more than just us trying to lead this. They are the heartbeat of it as we formulate things and move forth into the community. We've played with ways of describing Cool Boulder for a long time. There's been different blurbs on websites and different ways of describing it to people. One of these, this is one of them, supporting and mobilizing the community to regenerate our soils, trees, and habitats for a resilient community, climate, and future. Sounds great. It didn't stick necessarily, and one thing we really struggled with is how to describe Cool Boulder to people who didn't know what it was. We went through a process of trying to write a mission statement, all of the things that new organizations do. And this is a lot of words, but we didn't land on a mission statement. We landed on, what is the purpose of Cool Boulder? So it's a city-sponsored was key language we landed on because we were really leaning into community-led, and as they should, groups asked, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what does it actually mean to be community-led? And are you being clear in your language when you say that? Are you truly community-led? Because it sort of seems like the power rests with the city. So the more accurate or most accurate way we could come up with was to say city-sponsored, recognizing that at least half of my time as a city staff goes to being one of the lead coordinators, and that a lot of the resourcing is coming from the city, giving us a certain level of control in that. So we landed on city-sponsored, trying to create climate action in collaboration with community members and partners. It aims to enhance ecological health and resilience of local ecosystems, recognizing that we're working primarily urban. And we want to improve health and safety in all communities across Boulder. We had a lot of trouble listing all of the people, as you all do when you start thinking about equity. We leaned into language that the library uses actually, and listing the types of people we have. So we've got that in our fuller statement. But we wanted to include not only the blanket statement about, hey, who has enough nature, but recognizing in a statement somewhere there socioeconomic injustices, and that a lot of people aren't prepared to deal with what climate change is going to bring. And nature is one way to help with that. So we tried to encompass that in a statement. Caroline put a QR code on there. Easiest thing to do is probably go to our website and kind of play around and dig a little bit. But it took us a long time to come up with the words we like. And we also recognize it's going to change as the campaign grows. Another reason I wanted to show the steering team is that they led that. So this wasn't something we wanted to come up with on our own. We wanted a group that wasn't just us coming up with the purpose of Cool Boulder. So I don't know, are you all familiar with systems change level thinking? I'm assuming yes. I put this up here because the basis of how our team works and one way we're thinking about Cool Boulder is in the context of systems change and systems drivers. So recognizing that to be able to push on all of these pillars of systems change, Cool Boulder is just an intrinsic part of that for us, and a lot of that lives in the culture and cultural and social norms. Although certainly some in technology, pushes on policy and law and a little bit in markets, but not as much. I really think Cool Boulder's home is largely in the culture and social norms. So we're just thinking about ways to push on all of those pillars, finding Cool Boulder, a mechanism for that. And this is our diagram of trying to show like, hey, Cool Boulder can be part of all of these things that get us to change. So awareness, having an alternative is really important, adoption and social norming, ultimately leading to policy, law, and rule, and then scaling up as well so we can make a greater impact. So these are the ways we like to think about these things we're working on to get to a bigger change. And this is just another illustration of the ways we're trying to think about these things. A lot of these the dates aren't quite right anymore, but this is a formulation of, hey, how do we get from a failing system to a thriving system? What do we have to push on? And it's been really, really interesting to see how Cool Boulder can be a component of that and push on the inside of city things, being an outside group.
And I think this is also showing like how ecosystems work as kind of like a later addition to climate
Mhm.
stuff.
For
Like
sure.
it points out that ecosystems was first listed in the CAP Climate Action Plan in 2016, 2017. So just like speaks to the evolution of our department and how ecosystems and nature-based climate solutions started being incorporated in thinking about solution to these issues.
Absolutely. So mostly Caroline, bless her heart, attempted to write an impact report for Cool Boulder last year. It was very, very hard. We realized we had a lot left to define. But we did land on some really, really cool and interesting numbers, just thinking about Cool Boulder. We have a lot of partners and they're doing a lot of different things. And it was difficult to define success across a wide range of people. But we were able to, by surveying people, when we're thinking about specifically the ecosystems benefit, we were able to land on some really cool numbers across all of these people, over 14,000 new trees or shrubs. We're trying to always account for habitat material that's beyond trees because the whole ecosystem is more than just trees. And then over 62,000 active engagements across the network. And one reason we wanted to gauge that was because the potential of this group as a network is massive when it comes to cultural change and interactions with the public. So those aren't ones our team has done specifically, but that's the entire network interacting with the public, which is massive potential and really, really exciting. The 741 acres benefited. Can you remind me how we were defining benefited?
That's basically just land that our partners are like either monitoring or conducting like
Mhm.
restoration projects on. So yeah, benefited is kind of a loose term, but it's like the land that our partners are actively working on to restore or improve or monitor. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one big thing that's really important when we think about these numbers is we're also thinking about, for example, of these new trees and shrubs planted, do they have a steward? Is it not just like a stick getting dropped in the ground that someone mows over later? These are people who are actively engaged in stewarding these spaces, stewarding this work, and becomes a really cool network. And I should back up a little. We have our partners, and I'll talk about them a little more here. Partners are a little bit different than the general public. The general public is who we are facing with like a newsletter that we call an action alert and things like that. Partners we're working with closer, and they are folks who are all engaged in this relationship with us. So they've agreed essentially to work together and play nicely and help and work together. And the partner network has grown quite a lot, which is really cool. But there is a distinction between how we work with our partners and how we work with addressing the general public. We've grown up to 50 partners where we have a huge range of people who've been interested in us, want to talk about what it means to work with us. We have over 1,200 newsletter subscribers, and I've been told a 60% open rate is really good. So we're excited about that. Yeah, I'll take it. Our little Cool Boulder team alone, we're reaching thousands of people when you add it all up across the tabling events that we're doing when we're out focusing on just what is a nature-based solution? Why do we care? Why do we care about shading our community? Why do we care about doing this equitably? What are things you can do is a really big thing we talk about a lot. We've implemented monthly and quarterly themes, which actually has been really, really useful, and I go into that a little more later. We have a calendar of partner events. This is one of my favorite ways we work with the general public, is just to have a calendar where we're collecting events and managing that calendar so folks can really get on there anytime and be like, what can I do? And it's everything from webinars that you can access remotely to like, hey, come and plant trees here, which is really fun. It's a fun space, and it's also a benefit to our partners because we're trying to get people to their things as well. Direct event engagements, lots and lots of those throughout the year. And we'll almost always try to take an action with us. For example, we went to Growing Gardens event, it's their harvest festival, and we brought instructions on how to make a sow bag, which is just how do you affordably grow native plants to then plant in your space or another space. So we can address not having enough plant material if we were all to go out and plant these native plants. Another thing that's grown that's been really, really awesome to see has been our name for it has changed. We're leaning into community resource specialists right now. The Pollinator Advocates Program has really made a splash in a lot of interesting ways. It's a really intense, dedicated program. You apply, you come to classes weekly for a while, you go and do field work, and you really can't miss any of the material. And the people who graduate, like we have a graduation, the mayor comes and we do an official, like an official thing to really recognize it. And Andrea Montoya leads this, and really a huge part of her messaging is, if you want to do this, you have to volunteer. So I'm going to be calling on you to volunteer in steward spaces. And she does a great job of pulling these folks in. So the numbers are a little smaller than our tree tenders program, for example. Tree tenders, we help run, but we helped kick it off, and really the Tree Trust is starting to take it on and own it. These are looser. It's like 3 Tuesdays and come and connect with people and learn general information about trees. Whereas Pollinator Advocates is really committing people to time and a lot of information. And the Tree Tenders program, we've experimented a little bit with formatting. So there's been evening trainings, but there's also been these high school summits. And so they did a smaller tree tender training with over 50 people there, and 2/3 of them are students. So ways to empower students and people in different spaces. And these are the lists of folks who are called on first for volunteer events, for getting trees in the ground, for stewarding spaces. And we're running under sort of the theory of change that if you get trained in this, you now have the capacity to go forth and work with your neighbors. And we are seeing that happen, which is cool and also kind of hard to quantify. But we do see how people are coming in and connecting, like, oh, my neighbor did that, and this, or I'm gonna go out and work with my neighbors on fire resilience through this message I learned through this training.
And all the people in the Pollinator Advocates Program get a palette of native plants to create
Yes.
their own pollinator garden.
Yeah, Andrea makes them design a space. She grades it very intensely. And
What
then
year
they
did
get
you-
plants.
I did it in
22?
2023.
Oh, you did? Oh, so you know all about it.
Oh, yeah. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Andrea's really amazing.
She is.
And she has gone forth and done a lot of very equity-centered work
Yeah.
outside of this that I'll touch on here in a moment. We've also done some really fun things to engage the community. Do you want to talk a little about Little Creatures?
Yeah, Little Creatures this was happening right when I first started the fellowship, but it's one of my favorite events that we've done. So it was an art exhibit at the Boulder Public Library right over here. And it was focused on little creatures, so like mainly insects, and highlighting the importance of insects for ecosystems. And there are over 100 artists and poets that participated in the exhibit. And it's hard to know how many people actually saw the exhibit, because a lot of people just came to the library and happened to see it and like looked around. While I was there, I saw people just like come in and check it out. But for the related events that we had for the exhibit, we know that at least 700 people came to those. So it had a pretty good reach. And then just, yeah, anyone that was visiting the library likely saw it. And the B Plus Festival, yeah, also happens every year. We just had our, what was
The 10th year
10th year
anniversary, yeah.
anniversary. And so that coincided, I guess, with the Little Creatures exhibit, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing Cool Boulder is really doing is giving us a space to be less, hello, I am the expert coming to you from this space. You know, how do we work with art and community members to start conveying things about ecosystems? And the little creatures around us are really the baseline of our entire everything. So events that incorporate art, incorporate community in these ways we theorize will be more impactful than, say, a webinar. Or at least there's the chance of that. So it's been really amazing to have that space through Cool Boulder and that kind of that mechanism. This has also been really fun. I don't know, it's up on the slide, but do you want to talk about it a bit? You helped this year.
Yeah, we had, so this is another thing that has happened multiple years now, this summer and then last summer. You guys know Jeff and Paige, they're kind of a Boulder thing, phenomenon. But we hosted like a series of concerts for them. And they, you know, do a lot of messaging on nature-based climate solutions, composting, bees, all that good stuff. So I don't know how many concerts did we?
We have sponsored 2, and they are Meadow Music's run through OSMP, so it's a really great collaboration with other city departments. But just a way to bring in and reach little kids. Jeff and Paige are already really good at that. This is another strength that Cool Boulder has had, where it's like, hey, we make these connections with folks and they say, well, OSMP comes to us and says, we Jeff and Paige raise their prices. We can't afford to do all of the Meadow Musics we used to. Cool Boulder collaborate and do one. And Paige was like, this is my favorite one, because we get a ring of tents of Cool Boulder folks and have activities for the kiddos while the show is going on, and families can come and engage. And it's then, and this is a lot of the theory around partnering as opposed to creating something completely new. Jeff and Paige already have a huge reach. They have fans who buy their colorful socks. So being able to collaborate and tag in with something that already has a following and a platform is really, really helpful. And they incorporated songs about climate, and they talked about the Cool Boulder umbrella and how, you know, this touches us all. And it just is a strength of having a structure that allows us to collaborate in a less rigid way than we normally would through a lot of our city processes. And these are fun photos of things we've done. There's lots of photos of cute children painting things and planting plants and engaging and all sorts of stuff. Our Cool Boulder tent is darn near getting old already. And we're not that far in, so that's exciting. And then this is, there's so many scattered ways to talk about this because so many things have happened and grown out of it. And there's been tons of opportunity that's arisen. But I know you all talked with Brett about the CFC earlier, the Community Forestry Corps. And that wasn't a Cool Boulder program necessarily, but much of what came together to do the Community Forestry Corps the way we did was based on relationships that started within Cool Boulder. A really key group that helped with this was Classrooms for Climate Action. Do you all know them? They're a group of retired teachers who worked for 30 years in schools, saw Greta Thunberg and decided they hadn't had enough. And they come back in and they run programs in schools because as teachers, they fully understand that teachers are way over capacity. So instead of asking teachers to teach about climate, they come in and say, hey, we'll teach about climate.
Climate for what?
Classrooms for Climate Action. They're a
C4C.
Yeah, C4CA, not to be mixed up with CC4CA. But they're a powerhouse of people, and they are all folks who've already taught in high schools or elementary schools or been principals for 25, 30 years. They're really awesome. All that to say, they're a Cool Boulder connection, and a lot of what we formed through the community work. And they led and helped coordinate education days for the crew that was working for the Community Forestry Corps. The sites the Community Forestry Corps worked on were largely results of Cool Boulder projects, or projects that had begun with Cool Boulder connections working together. So things like this really begin with relationship. And the most incredible thing I think I've seen and am grateful for coming out of Cool Boulder is having a structure where we get to go out and build community and build connection. And that facilitates really, really impactful things like a youth corps that somehow pulls together in like 3 months. And had really, really great impact, and it turns out it's spreading nationally. An unexpected benefit that I get really excited about, our partners have monthly meetings, and, you know, it's a once a month Zoom meeting, okay. You know, there's only so much you could do with that, however, it provides a really cool structure. Every meeting, we have monthly themes that our steering team picked out, and we're coordinating around speakers around those themes. And every month I go to other city departments, for example, community risk reduction. I was like, how are we discussing wildfire risk in forests, like, and trees? Because I have people coming to me at tree tender training saying, well, everything you're saying makes me think I just can't have any trees. So we had an ability as a city team to go to our forestry folks and our community risk reduction folks and start navigating a really, really nuanced conversation around trees in the wildland urban interface. How do we avoid demonizing trees when there's risk of fire? What can we do? What actually matters in those circumstances? And to get that straight from community risk reduction and take it to the Cool Boulder partners. And that gives us a platform to start asking for people to help us collaborate on messaging. And they get excited because we have a mechanism to take it to the public. So it's been really interestingly beneficial for us as a team to have this structure to then take it out. And it also helps our colleagues at the city spread a unified kind of one Boulder approach in messaging about ecosystems. Okay, this is our list of partners. Don't try to read it. It's way too many. But it's really grown, and that's been really neat to see. It includes a preschool teacher in Lafayette. It includes arborists. It includes a couple little nonprofits that I don't quite know where they're going, but they've got big projects in mind and they're really stoked to connect. People like Drylands Agroecology Research or EcoCycle. A lot of folks doing really amazing things. And one of the main benefits we've had thus far has been communication and collaboration. Collaboration does grow out of that, but it's not necessarily like targeted. So we do a lot of asking, okay, there's people coming in, which is really, really key. But how do we take and use that to move action faster? And Caroline's done some thinking on this, and I would love if she was going to run through some of her thoughts on how to maybe do this with such a wide range of people, and we'd love some feedback from you if you have thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think this is just kind of thinking about where we go from here now that we've grown to like a pretty good size, great reach, moving towards more place-based action, which Heather might talk about more, but also thinking about how we work with our different kinds of partners, because we have a wide range of groups that all come together for these monthly Zoom meetings. We've done some great education, but how do we really work with these different types of partners to get more nature-based climate solutions active in Boulder? So these are just basically a brainstorm on the different categories that we have for partners. And I can just briefly kind of go through them as examples and talk a little bit about how we are thinking about working with them. But this is very much like early stages. We're trying to plan ahead more for how we want to engage with these types of partners, like I said. So the first one is our pollinator and biodiversity champions. These are mainly like nonprofits that are national in scale, or they're like a chapter of a national nonprofit. That they focus a lot on raising awareness and changing policy to support biodiversity. So for each of these categories, you'll see we'll have a Cool Boulder goal, CB goal, and then the Cool Boulder role. So like, what is our role working with these partners? So the goal very broadly is Boulder is a thriving haven for biodiversity. That's what we want to see. And what is our role working with these partners in pursuit of this goal with them? Connecting Boulder residents to these groups so that they have a broader reach, amplifying their work and sharing the resources that they create, because they have so many wonderful experts that are working on creating resources for people. So sharing those and connecting Boulder with them. And then we have a lot of groups that are working specifically with youth engagement, so working in schools and or with youth in general. Our Cool Boulder goal is young generations are well versed in nature-based climate solutions, so it's pointing towards like the cultural change that we want to see. And then also that school grounds are centers of nature-based climate solutions, so the actual like school properties are implementing these types of practices. So Cool Boulder's potential role is just facilitating the connections between partners and schools. And I think we're seeing more and more of that, which has been really great. And then we have our producers. So these are groups that produce like physical things. So native plants, seeds, compost. I'm gonna read it small.
You see over here too.
Yeah, and our goal is more native plants and healthier soils in Boulder. So maybe our role is supporting the expansion of capacity for these producers. And then connecting them to projects, so getting the things that they make into the ground in Boulder. And you can see just a list of all the partners that you might know. Harlequins grows a ton of native plants. There's EcoCycle makes compost, Masa Seed Foundation made a huge seed bank of locally adapted seeds. Boulder Mushroom makes mycelium compost stuff.
Kids and things,
Yeah. And your neighborhood at Christmas Tree Farm, they grow a ton of tree saplings that they give away each year. So, yeah. And then land stewards is kind of a broad group category. It's just people that own multiple acres of land in Boulder. So our goal is, you know, seeing them use this land to implement nature-based climate solutions type work. And so our role would be to share resources to them. And then also a big one is learning how we could track our impact and progress. And then coordinating volunteers into these spaces. So there's a list of some of the partners that actually own land, and some of them that we have the numbers for actually how much land they own or work on. And then housing / HOAs, we're actually not doing a ton of work with HOAs yet, but that's a huge area for expansion because we've gotten a lot of interest from HOAs. But our goal is, you know, more neighborhoods are connected, prepared for disasters, and residents are working together towards implementing nature-based climate solutions on their properties. So our role could be connecting the partners who can help implement these resources, especially for turf removal and pesticide reduction. So that's connecting a lot of the producers and the actual landscape workers to these areas. And there's just a few more. This is what I just mentioned, landscapers and arborists and people that work in ecosystem management. So our goal would be that more landscapers that are working in Boulder are trained in and employ ecosystems-based approaches. And, you know, our role would be providing resources and opportunity for training in these practices and providing just a place for these like-minded landscapers to network and share knowledge. And yeah.
Yeah, this is just a big question we have is, you know, we've had all this opportunity to do amazing connection work and to watch those connections grow. And it's honestly, it is one of the first things I woke up thinking about, you know, post a big election was like, hey, there's all these local things that connect us. And the importance of community connection is really hopeful because, again, I could wax on poetic about what I've seen grow from this. I won't, but unless you want me to, but this has become such an important space socially. Like I was on the phone with the JCC today and the person who runs their firm there was like, yeah, I've met Adrian. I met him in one of those breakouts, one of your team meetings, you know, like it, and those connections happen all the time because of this structure. But if we're also thinking as a city team using city resources, this amazing group of folks in Boulder, we're so lucky, and now we're connected to all of these people, and some are more engaged and some are less engaged and some show up once in a while and some may never come back. I don't know, we'll see. But how do you take this varied and large of a group and point it and go for action on the ground? We're not going to lose the social aspect. That's incredibly important for community building, for welcoming new groups in. And there's this added layer to bring in on the top where we start working together on it. Just wanted to see if you guys had thoughts or suggestions on that. It's a big question. Or just questions
It's not anything we talked about too.
Yeah.
And do we want to start with any questions, any inquisitiveness we have about this?
I have a question. So like the project divides into 3 areas.
Mhm.
What's the effort allocation you think for each area? Is it like 33% each, or like is there one that has? More?
You mean amongst the partners or like on the city end?
I guess in the city, since the city's leading this.
I think some of it has depended on where there's opportunity. And that actually has been the most interesting thing in thinking about how we grow to me is a lot of what we've done has been really opportunistic. There has been so much opportunity in the pollinator and tree space. The same level of opportunity is only just growing in the absorbent landscape space. Culturally, green stormwater infrastructure, low impact development, those things are still kind of coming along in a way that it's just not to where pollinator advocacy is yet. So the effort is really similar on our team end, especially because we're kind of split amongst those 3 areas pretty evenly. A lot of Adrian's time gets devoted to integrated pest management, which doesn't really fall within the cool boulder sphere. But the output is higher right now in the tree and pollinator space. Whereas on the city end, a lot of the GSI stuff is very internal. But we're working towards more external facing things with partners like Resource Central. And then collaborating, there is currently an accelerator running, which is a way to gather people around the state of the science and the state of community work around green infrastructure. And we're participating in that. So learning a lot. We're teaming up with Denver and Fort Collins on that. So we're doing regional learning. Effort wise, I would contend it's pretty well split, but output wise, you're gonna see different results. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what do you mean by output? Would it be like those, that impact chart that you had like the?
Yeah, and when we think about like, so this community resource specialist I was talking about, we've had 3 cohorts of pollinator advocates, and we've had this engaged circle, and people are really knowledgeable. We've had multiple tree tech trainings. We haven't been able to pick up anything around absorbent landscapes, although we're working in different ways to work on soil and water. But there's not like a community training yet, kind of thing. So you're gonna see more about the bees and the butterflies than you are about the soil microbes, although we really want that to change.
Okay, cool.
Can I just, do you mind if I add? It's an interesting question because I think that the program, and when I say program, I mean this body of work within the department is relatively new, but I think it's really hitting a stride in a really unique way. And so when I think about outputs, they're not always obvious in facing ways that Heather just described. So much of it is really internal to the organization, but they're really powerful outputs. So when we find these entry points with other departments, and you saw that in one of the slides, just the opportunity to work really closely with our Parks Department. How do we integrate nature-based solutions into the decisions that are taking place within some of the master planning processes, our water efficiency plan, our drought management plan, our grasslands management plan, our Parks and Rec plan, a master plan, how we think about designing some of the new parks with nature-based solutions in mind in a different way than was once thought about, how we think about nature-based solutions when it comes to our forestry work and our wildfire work. And so having those entry points into those other areas in such a short amount of time is really, I think, a testament to the team and their ability to really share a really compelling message of why this is so critical. And not just from the perspective of climate, but how each of those departments can really see the value in integrating this new approach to the work that's already taking place. So, and I think that's really powerful, but it's also a little bit scary because we become thought leaders, but also a lot of doers. And we have a small team that can get pulled in a lot of different directions. And so I just wanted to share that as one of the, in my mind, it's one of the critical outputs versus an outcome that we've been seeking.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I will say too, the structure of Cool Boulder has been really awesome, and that like I'm out behind a table talking to people from under this tent a lot. So is Caroline, so is Jazzy, our new AmeriCorps, which is really exciting. But I end up in city spaces where I go, well, I know that people in the community are asking about this, because they have approached my table and spoken to me for 40 minutes about this. I know that there's at least something out there in the community about this and the design.
Yeah, first of all, I love Gold Boulder, big fan over here, did the program, was in the bee parade this year. So I was like, big fan. So thank you for all your work, I think it's really wonderful and such a great community resource, especially all the kids' activities. Have you guys considered working more deeper in food systems? No one's gonna be surprised about that question here. My background is also nature-based solutions and there's just so much overlap in kind of the areas you guys are working in and then kind of climate food systems. I'm just curious if that's come up and.
It comes up a lot, and I think we haven't had a clear avenue into it yet, and maybe Jonathan, you might be able to talk about this too. One thing that has happened is through partnerships, we've touched it.
Yeah.
So example, Community Fruit Rescue, we work a lot with them. I volunteered as a harvest leader with them all year, which is
Nice.
super fun, because they have an awesome volunteer model and like 23,000 pounds of fruit, or maybe 32, I'm trying to remember. I think they maybe hit 32,000 pounds moving fruit, so
That's amazing.
there are efforts that cross over into this really, really naturally.
Growing Gardens.
Yeah.
Masa also makes a
Yeah.
lot of food.
Yeah.
Who else? With the garden.
Garden, so we just started working with Garden to Table. They recently partnered with us. They were at like Jeff and Page. The thing that I think that's most interesting coming up about the food systems is that Andrea Montoya, when she's out working with communities, and actually my slide on this disappeared, so I apologize. I actually meant to touch on this earlier. Weird day, but she has made connections and inroads with a couple manufactured homes communities. But she came to them, and she'll tell this story in her wonderful Andrea way. It's just very like, I don't know, I love how she tells it. But she came to them with this idea like, I'm gonna go show up and get them all excited about pollinators. And it's gonna be great, we're gonna plant pollinator species. And she showed up and they were all getting to know each other, and she starts hearing them talk about how much they hate bugs. They just hate those freaking insects, and just angrily talking about the stupid moth. And she was like, oh, shoot. And what she learned from that is what people are interested in is growing food.
Yeah.
And over a course of a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I remember getting a call from her. She wanted me to come to one of these, and she called me. She's like, please don't come. They're gonna be weirded out that a city person is there. I was like, great, I don't need to be there. But she figured out through building those connections, how to connect food systems to pollinator systems, how to show that when you have more bugs, you have better peppers. And she's now working in several spaces where Caroline got to help with one. There've been you've helped with two? Yes, that's right. There've been installations of pollinator plants on top of food spaces. And so it's obviously incredibly critical that we're doing both. We don't have a specific setup for it yet. And can I pitch this to you a little bit in the background? Because it has seemed tricky, and I'm still a newer employer, at least I feel like it. I'm 2 years in. I've picked up that it's tricky to cross into food systems, partially because it deals so much like with health. And is there a background in that with climate a little bit that you could speak to?
Yeah, though I thought you did a really good job. So
Okay.
I can really add far to this. Now, I was totally prepared. But I knew that you were gonna bring up food systems. I'm gonna answer it this way. The city has kind of dipped their toe into this idea of food policy and food systems in the past, but I don't think that we were really intentional of what problem we were trying to solve or what that outcome was. A lot of it was based on some of land use discussions about, should we look at year-round farmers market? Should we look at our policies to encourage more year-round agricultural opportunities? And a lot of what was happening is we were seeing what was coming from other cities that have more Mediterranean climates, right? So we have places like Seattle and other places that have really strong food policy and food programs within a sustainability program or a climate program. And that's not where we are. And so what is the problem that we are trying to solve or think about? And so what we realized is we were kind of chasing or creating problems just to try to solve them. And we really didn't have a really good comprehensive view of of how do we bring this together? What are we aiming to achieve as a city organization and where should it live? And that's not to say that we're not interested. But in my opinion, at least for our department, I want us to be very intentional about what we're trying to do. And are we going to have the support and connection to the other parts of the organization that are so necessary? So where we've been stepping back into it is more from a resilience standpoint to say, how do we think about, we've just gone through a consumption-based inventory, recognizing the impact that food has on our emissions overall, thinking about our vulnerable populations and how do we encourage more opportunity for local food production when it makes sense to do so. What are the regulations and policies that potentially prohibit or restrict or enable food policy and local food production, hoop houses, gardening and rights of way, all of those kinds of things. And so it didn't land previously in a specific home, meaning a department. So it was really being run out of the city manager's office from a policy perspective, and that really didn't set it up to be successful. So I do know, you'll appreciate this, that there's been a little bit of a resurrection in the conversation now. But mostly from the intention of, okay, where should it live? What do we want to accomplish? Who's going to do the work? How does it then kind of move out into our planning department in terms of land use issues, our permitting, thinking about our parks as opportunities for kind of trialing and showcasing new ways of local food production. So Primos Park is a great example of that, up of Iris, or not Iris, thank you, Violet. Peace. Where we were actually engaged in that planning process to say, how could food production be integrated into the use and design of that park, not just in a superficial way, but an opportunity for the adjacent Mobile Home Park to actually teach and learn indigenous practices and how you cultivate and how you use that land in different ways. And so we're starting to see some of that flourish a little bit and a renewed interest in some of the food policy stuff.
Nice. I will say that the county nature-based solutions team does a lot of work around agriculture.
They do
and,
lessons, yeah.
Yeah, farmers.
And it makes sense, right? Because they're so much more connected to, regenerative ag opportunities through
Yeah.
their open space. Our open space department also does a fair amount.
Yeah.
But most of those leases are for grazing and not food production.
Yeah.
So the county's is.
One other thing just to tag on to that is another really natural connection to Cool Boulder has been to regenerative farmers. So even some folks that aren't listed on like our partner list, we've hosted programs on farms. And so making some of these connections through resilience and regeneration, but not necessarily the food production aspect, but the teachings around how you start with the soil and move into a healthier.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that also exciting. I still think that there's a cool opportunity perhaps around the cultural piece and social norms that you talked about to add a, educational component, just like you're teaching people that xeriscape native plants are better than non-native water intensive plants. There are certain climate friendly diets that are better for the climate than not. It's kind of a similar we're just educating, we're supporting people in these ways, and this just seems like a natural place to do that since you're already touching with a lot of people and a lot of partners. I know the JCC does some great work on that and some of your other garden gardens and stuff like that. So in terms of, that could be an answer to your question.
Yeah.
Another way to do that, or just generally, I was thinking with that, I guess I don't know everything you're doing, it sounds like a lot, but if all these partners had a whatever bingo card checklist, it's like, here's all the things you can do, hire whatever, not gas landscaper, if it's a lot of businesses and things like that that have all the space, are they just kind of meeting the highest standards and then helping their other, right? I don't know, just brainstorming. Maybe that's a little too specific to answer your question, but.
Something like checklists or guidelines, like, hey, here. The guidelines, we're working on like plant guidelines and things for the WUI, like through the city.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm envisioning can you hit these 5 things to
Right.
get a sign or something, or kind of.
Yeah, it's almost like I always use PACE as an example,
Sure.
and I don't even know how good it is because I've never used them personally, but it's like having a consultant almost on hand to be like, okay, if you want to be, that's like for energy, but if you want to be sustainable for nature-based solutions, for your team. You might not have capacity for that, but you know, creating some
Yeah.
playbooks or whatever.
I do like the idea of a playbook. quite a
Yeah.
lot, so, and like, or a scorecard or, you know, something
Yeah,
along
and then
those
even
lines.
other cities could, you know, people anywhere could really access it.
Yeah, because that was gonna be my thought, was gonna be about creating some kind of. As much as Cool Boulder is an incredible program, it's very Boulder specific.
Yeah.
It is a list of things that we have done with our communities and a specific group of local organizations and individuals and groups in order to create an incredible program in the city. But I think in the city of Boulder, we have such an opportunity to be a nationwide leader in so many things. It would be about how do we transform and, you know, keep what Cool Boulder is as it pertains to Boulder, but find a way to genericize it
Sure.
in order to be like, not just this is what we did, but this is like sort of the steps that you can go through, find your local X group, whatever.
Right.
And then so it's easier for cities to start their own process. As opposed to, yeah.
I was just to follow up on that, I've had at least 4 different cities call me, just being like, how did you do this?
Right.
And just walking them through that, so we've unofficially kind of been a touchstone for that. And how to scale up, which I always have a question personally around scaling up versus replication. Because Boulder is so specific in
Yes.
types of risks and types of groups and politics and things. So we've tried to give some general guidance, and a lot of it for them has come down to, well, I'm one person and I have no budget.
Right.
So what we've shot for is saying, hey, there's something on our website that helps you use it. If I can add something that helps you, take it. So yeah, thinking in those ways of how do you expand that impact of this kind of structure.
And recognizing that we don't have it all figured out by any
Right.
means, and we still want to make sure we're reaching equitably within Boulder before we go crazy. with-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so,
could be an interesting seminar topic for next year's, one of the multi-city board groups, like,
Yeah,
to kind of like reach out to the other boards. And hopefully they can put a little more, I guess, pressure into like their councils to like kind of find just maybe some leadership too, to kind of set those initiatives.
yeah.
And replicate it in other cities.
There is one thing that my slide disappeared, but I'd love to touch on too, that I hope we can spread, and I think RD kind of has had some influences. Working on flipping paradigms using Cool Boulder and using city funding through Cool Boulder. So as we're talking about food and growing gardens, one thing that grew out of actually kind of a snafu at a Cool Boulder meeting is Growing Gardens presented, and they did a great job, but it was one of the first meetings we had someone from Harvestville First Nations on. And there was information about the past land ownership, but no land acknowledgement, no anything like that, and it caused consternation. But what was really cool is people handled it like adults and said, hey, this is a problem. People addressed it, and actually Growing Gardens and Harvest of All First Nations has a really amazing partnership right now, because that's what grew out of it. And Hoffman is producing food at Growing Gardens for their community. So it's been an amazing thing to see grow out of that, is like, how do you form these relationships where it becomes a bonding thing even when it's hard? And I think all of these groups have handled this splendidly, just with a lot of grace and a lot of great job working together. The thing we did through Cool Boulder and with some of our funding that I would love to see spread is contracting, and Harvest of All First Nations has shown up as an amazing equity partner, but we contracted with them to work with their own community. So this was an event open to the public, but we sponsored a time and a space that it was supposed to be a seed collection, but there really wasn't a lot of seed available at the time we could make it happen, but it became just time together on the land. And so we contracted with them to coordinate with their own community to bring Indigenous identifying folks to a program on open space. And so it's really, really cool to be able to use some of that funding to try to provide a space that would help that subset of our population gain some more access to land. And in a small way that this has spread out in an inner Boulder way, is that other departments have asked me for the language I wrote into the contract to make that possible, because their group had questions about like intellectual property. And there was a lot of trust building to do just to show like like, I'm not in this for the photo op, like, I really, like, I will commit to not taking photos. And like, when they made a flyer, I was like, you don't have to put my logo on it. Like, say sponsored by Cool Boulder in small print at the bottom, that's all I need you to do. And that kind of thing is really big to some of the groups we're working with, and I don't know that that will scale out to other cities, but it's scaled out to other departments, and they've asked me about it, they tried to learn from it, and then the county did ask us recently, you know, that spectrum of like community engagement, goes from inform to empower. They asked, did you do any projects that you feel were closer to the empower end? And I shared that one with them, and I said, here's the contract language I use, is like, I think this is as close as we've gotten anyway, and it felt good because they had the reins, but we were able to sponsor it. And it will hopefully grow. So we're gonna do a wrap up with meeting with them as soon as they're able to in their capacity. So there's all these different levels of spreading out that I'm always interested in, and that was one I did want to share with you all. Is when you think about systems change, there has been a shift to pull community in more at the forefront and in the way where they get to dictate how they want things to happen.
The gentle drawback of that always, and the tension that we face, is then we'll get messages from folks in the community saying, why isn't the city doing something like Cool Boulder? Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
And it's the same structure that we use with Energy Smart or with PACE. Those are not branded as city because we recognize that in order to, in this case, to actually scale up our impact outside our own boundaries, we shouldn't brand that as a City of Boulder thing, because folks in an unincorporated county or in Longmont, no offense to anyone in Longmont at the time, like, no, we don't want to do whatever it is they're selling.
Right.
But the challenge then is we hear a lot of that. Why isn't the city doing something like PACE? Why aren't you doing something like Energy Smart? And like, well, those are actually are. But it's not a bad thing. I actually don't mind.
Right.
Although there is always that challenge about then showing the value of the funding that taxpayers are paying into to see the benefit through these programs. And so it's always a kind of a little bit of a touchy tension, I'll just put it that way. But it's fine. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's an easy one to manage.
It's an
It's a
adventure.
pleasant surprise to give them, like, oh, yeah.
I think it's
That is-
lovely. I was like,
that is doing
thank
that.
you for that softball question. You know, it's great. And I will say, I think it's the absolute right way to do it. I mean, this is that whole idea of how do we slowly shift that power and really build that community trust, so. 100%.
So I have one more question, like, is there like an end game with the project, like you can look at a heat map, right, of Boulder, you can look at a tree canopy map. Is there like a, 75% residential canopy goal, like, what is the project in 10
We should be
years,
getting to
right?
that.
And that's where like we kind of are approaching questions like this, right? It's like, how do we take this group now and point it in direction? And the name is the direction, you know, like, how do we cool Boulder? We're not to a point yet of saying that X percentage of degrees via this many trees. That's the objective, and that's where the city end work and the Cool Boulder work team up, where it's like on the city end, we've paid for some analyses and things, and we're trying to get to numbers that help us set really tangible targets. In activating a group like this, one thing we've considered is, okay, how are we gonna see if Cool Boulder is actually cooling Boulder right now, when we don't have a perfect number to say like, if you do this, this will happen, because we don't quite know that. And there's also climate scenarios that we have to operate under, because we don't know exactly how it'll go. But one, kind of corny, but might work suggestion is like, I might go out there and say, okay, as a group, Cool Boulder, let's see if we can plant 15,000 trees. And have a dashboard, and email me when you plant your trees, and we'll keep a dashboard going on the website. And I don't quite know how to do it, but that's the goal, is to get to that kind of target and then keep these activated folks moving towards that target.
I would say within the next few months, we should have a canopy target, at least for high vulnerability areas, and possibly a citywide one, and then we'll know the number of trees to get to that.
So,
Yeah,
That's
we're
the
working
goal.
on it.
Yeah.
and my second question is like, are there any polls, will this be useful even, like, you mentioned land use, and like code updates. Is this something that in the future could be like integrated in the way planning board does reviews of projects, like consider the tree canopy,
We would love
Yes.
that.
like, or when, with permits and stuff, like new, I guess, would it be part of the landscape code, for example, like, need to have 50% tree canopy in your new residential development kind of deal?
Yeah.
Is that kind of like something that? Or is that too?
No,
controversial?
that's already in the works, and some of those elements have already been incorporated, and it fits within a whole kind of constellation of code.
Mhm.
So at the highest level, we have this great opportunity now, and the board will have an opportunity to weigh in on updates to the Boulder Valley Comp Plan.
Mhm.
That's at the very high level. Then from that flow things like form-based code or building code requirements, land use planning more directly. The landscape code is a great example. The first discussion around that is coming up next month. And then there'll be an opportunity for the board to plug in to talk about how to use the landscape code. It was council that had a strong interest in using the landscape code to address wildfire risk. But at the same time, it is the time to open up that code to look at other issues around water, around how do we think about tree canopy, around shrubs. And I want to make this point really loud. And I think this is something you just heard from Heather earlier. It's not about planting trees, it's about growing trees. And so we need to think then about how we have the stewardship necessary to get to mature canopies. Because I will tell you, there's a practice in cities where it's like you are up on the hill and you see a tree well that's just empty. Well, let's just plant a tree there and make it look good for right now. But we need mature canopy for a variety of reasons. We need the right species, the right selection in the right place, thinking about thinking about our urban tree canopy. So there's a lot in discussion right now, and then who actually can pull those levers, whether it's our permitting folks, whether it's a policy that council enacts, whether it's our forestry department. So you're right on track. That's absolutely what we need to be thinking about, and that's what we are doing.
So do you think we'll get a chance to talk about that during the
Yes.
landscape, or is it too early, like, you were saying, like, so need?
No, it's not too early. So there is a 90-minute conversation coming up in December when we do our look ahead in December, where council is going to get their first look at the types of things that are being contemplated within the landscape code update. This all came out of council's discussion at their retreat earlier this year. And one of the items was, how do we think about wildfire risk? What are the opportunities that we have when it comes to policy? Oh, well, landscape code is a really interesting one. It all came from the whole juniper discussion around the whole Jump the Juniper campaign. Should we go out there and rip junipers out? Well, maybe, maybe not. Is that really what we should be doing? Is that really the risk that we ought to be addressing? So that's going to be the first part of it. And then it was, well, wait a minute, if we're going to talk about wildfire, why don't we, in the landscape code, why don't we talk about water use? And then how do we think about climate friendly landscaping, not just putting in rock or pea gravel or crushed granite? What does it mean to increase heat by rock? And so those are all the kind of things that we want to integrate into the conversation. So we're making smart choices when we make code changes.
And we will get to tree canopy as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we have a tree protection ordinance. The thing that's going to come out of that is how do we address tree protection on private property? That's been a really tough one, because I will tell you, this community is a bit divided on whether or not the city should regulate whether people can or can't or should not be regulated on taking down trees or replacing trees on their own property.
As we're leaning into some cultural change, it's been really important through Cool Boulder, I think. It's like we tack it from one side, but there's a cultural change that we can do of like, a reminder, 80% of our tree canopies on private property, and this benefits everybody. So how do we think about that and try to push the needle on the cultural norms and through things like Cool Boulder, and then also working on it in the city end.
And we have a tree protection plan.
But having like a minimum canopy requirement kind of deal, will that be a few years from now? Or is that?
Nobody has to be, if you're building, you have to plant.
Correct.
I mean, yeah,
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, so
there's something, but it's.
Yeah.
Pretty.
it's kind of tough with canopies too, though, because like I cannot have solar on my roof, for example, right? Like I try to like get panels. Actually, my house is pretty shaded, which is nice. But if like, I will have to go alternatives, like to get panels, like the guy that came to do the quotes, like, when would your tree die, is called me.
Boulder was one of the first cities in the country to have a tree protection ordinance in relation to solar. Because we did not want to put people in this place of saying, well, I want solar, but my neighbor has a tree that shades my roof, so I want them to cut it down, or vice versa, right? I don't want, that person wants solar, I'm not, so how do you deal with the compatibility issue? So the tree protection ordinance is intended to address that, and we revised it.
That's a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about living in Boulder is we're right next to all of these wide open plains that are incredible for putting solar panels on.
Except they're incompatible uses when it's open space. But that's why, I mean, it was in fact, sorry, we're going down a totally different path. But it's one of the reasons that we created the solar garden legislation that was passed at the state level. And it was for that very reason. I was having to address all these variances that builders were asking for because we have really aggressive targets with respect to renewables. Like, well, you want me to cut down trees to put solar on the roof to meet a certain level of requirement or what? Like, well, no, that's not really what we want.
Right.
So like we should have access to solar that is connected to your meter, but just happens to be in a different location. So we passed that and it's became the model for every state in the country.
Incredibly beneficial, because one of my first ideas, I think honestly, when I was applying to the board, so I was like the solar program the solar grants that we have for building solar, and I was like, well, but we also live in an urban forest, right? Like we have far too many trees to make it consistently applicable. What if we just did like light poles, but for solar panels? Which, not a terrible idea, but also not the most efficient use of space, right? Because there is all of this unused open plain space that people aren't walking their dogs in.
I did just learn.
Also parking lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
I did just learn that I was at a community event, because there's another thing that branches off of this, is I get invited into community spaces that may or may not get a city invite often. I learned from someone that some of the newer solar panel technology is actually like kind of opaque and lets a significant amount of light through.
Mhm.
I didn't know that, and they were talking about like Jack's Solar Garden, which is awesome. He went out there, he's an engineer, he looked at it and he's like, well, this is great, but also like our solar panel technology is actually advancing even further beyond this. And so he donated some of those types of solar panels. I don't know what's come of that, but he said he donated some of those types of solar panels to Jack's so they could continue doing that research, but with a newer advanced technology.
I actually have not heard that.
That came out of that Cohere event that I went to. But
That's cool.
yeah, and also, side note, those community events, they get really excited when a city person shows up and sees the city and is engaged, so that's really fun. But yeah, that was interesting news to me about solar, and then the conversation went down a track of somebody being like, so can we make trellises out of solar panels, and all these things.
Yeah, building integrated solar is like, we're a little bit behind in this country, but we actually have some firms here, Lumos is one, in fact, it's here in Boulder that does that kind of really, really creative use of solar in other cities, right?
Well, because if we're gonna stand by having minimum parking requirements, you might as well make shaded parking and use it as solar space, because there is no point in not doing that. But that's a whole thing.
I happy to take any more questions, but I figured I'd give her a little final point. It's like this was kind of long and rambling, and I appreciate y'all sticking with me. But if I could have you all take one key thing away, it really is that connection is everything. Everything moves at the speed of trust, and we've been really fortunate to have the structure of Cool Boulder for just a little over 7 years now, and it's the connections that have come of it have really been so amazing to see, and nothing's gonna stop those. No federal level politics, no local politics, community level stuff is gonna keep moving. And to tap into those connections and to be part of those connections, this gives us so much opportunity to make such a huge difference. And it's been completely and utterly observable via what has happened through Cool Boulder and the stuff our team has been able to do. So I'm just very grateful to have this structure in place, and it's gonna morph and change based on, how we work with the community and what we hear. But it's a really awesome thing to be able to be part of, and I'm really excited to see it continue to grow. So you'll probably get to hear me talk at you for an hour again sometime. But thanks for listening. And if you have any follow-up questions, please.
It was a very interesting presentation. I look forward to the next one.
I have a small tangent on this topic, connection, that you guys probably, it's not within your purview, but I'm just gonna plant some seeds. I think it would be very cool. The city sponsored an in-person co-working space for this very reason of like bringing together city staff, community partners. Just throw out there for Alpine Broadway building. I don't know who's in charge of doing that. If anyone knows, tell me. I just like mentioned this to anyone that's staff I see for this reason, because I do think things happen when you get people together. And that especially right now in this virtual world, that like physically bringing partners and stuff in a shared space is really powerful, so. You guys, talk to whoever's in charge of that.
I do, I mean, there's a huge community interface piece of Alpine Balsam. I don't think that it's been contemplated for like a co-working space, but that's an interesting.
Where city staff spend some time,
Mhm.
I'll run it. It was the space.
What's that building? Open box. Right?
Alpine Balsam.
Yeah.
It's not
Where
built
the-
yet, that's.
where the hospital
Yeah,
used to be.
Yeah, sure, right. Oh, okay.
That is where we will be housed, yes.
Ooh, so it's like an office building?
It is where most of the city staff, this building will stay here. But our department and the good number of departments that interface with the public are all gonna move up there. And be co-located together. Yeah. So it's been under design now for a while, both in terms of the physical form of the building, but how it should be used. And so there's still much discussion about interface with the community, should be that hub.
Oh,
For
nice.
creativity,
Oh, that's it,
yeah.
okay, great.
It was like a little like coffee shop,
That's
like
Thing
open
they
like
might do.
workspace.
It'd be really handy, actually.
Like-
Yeah.
'Cause-
Like the Impact Hub,
Yes.
just where I used to work, but
Oh, you were there?
yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
helped get it started and everything.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I
It
will
was a
say,
co-working space.
we were just at the Urban Sustainability Directors Network.
Yes.
Annual meeting of that, USDN, but a couple of people I've talked to talked about how. One mechanism for outreach that was successful is doing like coffee hours
Yeah.
or office hours where they were just there.
Yep.
And that I think is just a really cool mechanism. Be like, I'm just gonna be here, show up. Please don't yell at me, but also like show up.
We do that, but people don't.
Okay, just like put a coffee shop in the building and just have like rotating staff member who just like have an hour that they just like sit in the public and like. There's just like,
Yeah,
if you wanna
there's
talk to city staff, just like there's a person there. who-
Really, I love it and I'm terrified. What's the online basically version of that? Inquirable?
Fireball.
Oh, yeah.
We do, we've tried it a number of times, and we do quarterly office hours for our department, and it's just kind of non-scripted. We don't do a presentation, like what do y'all want to talk about?
I don't know about the hours.
Yeah, we do it just in that room over there.
You got people?
Yes.
Know it exists and we're
Yeah,
I'm signed on the newsletter.
Really?
You're promoting.
Newsletter. Darn it. Turns out I found that our staff team doesn't even read it.
I just signed it.
I did a trivia question and I'm like, name 3 things out of the 4 that were in there, and it was like crickets. And I heard, are you a newsletter? It was like-
Yeah, wait, do you know the number of newsletters I get in my inbox?
I
am
know.
not reading every single one of those, are you kidding me?
Totally get it, I totally get it.
Uh,
So it's a 60% rate.
Don't get the newsletter.
Pretty good.
Definitely signed up.
I think I heard today, I just did like a simplifying language training and I think the number is you're at 7 seconds per newsletter. basically.
Goldfish.
Yeah.
Goldfish.
I read that, I'm on your
Always goldfish.
60% open rate.
You are. Well, we appreciate it. Yes. I'm at the point where I'm really stoked I'll be out somewhere. So I was like, oh, I love Cool Boulder. I'm like, oh, you know the deal. I'm very excited.
I think I'll subscribe maybe, but
You think what?
I think I'll subscribe.
I will subscribe you.
Involuntarily, whether I like it or not.
Link, because I have signed up.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, fun, okay.
but I signed up again, so we'll see.
Yeah, just wrapping up,
15,000 unread emails, don't expect me to know what I'm signed up to.
They have 15,000.
Yes, 15,000.
I am deeply embarrassed. I misquoted, earlier, we were talking about non-functional turf. It wasn't 51, it was Senate Bill 5. 51 was incentives and rebates for heat pumps and renewables.
We all
Come
caught
for you
that.
over that.
I know, I was like, "Ugh," I'm on the
My
record.
apologies.
I did forward it to you, so you have a link to the bill.
Unread emails.
Oh.
Yeah, I got the link.
Okay. And it does describe like your question about defining non-functional turf. I see that.
ChatGPT told me.
Oh, good. But you have to say what is functional turf, and then the definition of non-functional is anything that is not functional,
Yeah,
but it's
they're
fine.
nicely six
It says non-functional turf is grass that is not used for recreation or community activities, such as grass in medians, parking lots, or alongside, or along roadsides.
Oh, we look-
There's significant water without substantial BP. Thank
Well,
you,
yeah.
ChatGPT.
Mm.
Thank you all.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
What are y'all's names, by the way? I know your last name.
My name is Brooke.
Oh,
Board chair, yeah.
Brooke.
Hannah.
Hannah Davis.
Davis.
Nan. Air like air, nan like nan bread.
Hernan Villanueva.
Yeah.
Both your names.
Could you?
I know, don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Both your names on it.
It's a lot of syllables.
It's a lot of syllables.
Thank you both, seriously.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys,
cheers.
appreciate it.
It's very
Thanks for
interesting.
listening. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up talking about other cities, because
Yeah.
we've definitely taken a stab at a replication guide and haven't had a ton of luck yet.
Yeah.
But it's.
No,
there's
because
something
it's
for us
one of
right
those things that really stands out to me that I have always, that has been one of my things that I've wanted to do as long as I've been on this board is like. Looking to how we can be both a leader and not just in like what we do, but like. Not just in terms of being like on the front edge of things, but also in terms of being able to lead people to follow us.
Sure.
And so how to turn everything into like take the lessons that we have learned and you know whatever is applicable in the scenario and turn that into generic language and steps, guidelines and those kinds of things that even if they aren't going to be like this is exactly how you do your thing, it's like we'll take 20% off your plate in getting this kind of thing started, and that might be enough to get several dozen cities to like follow along.
Codifying it would be really helpful. There is a cool Chicago, and they started in the same place we did, which was heat mapping.
That's great.
So a little bit of that has happened, and I think that was what we sort of said was like a great first step and a super applicable to them because big city. So it technically started. I don't know how far it lasted.
It's still going.
Is it?
Yeah, and you saw in one of those slides, the accelerator that you and you mentioned it in your comments, and that's very intentional. So part of the challenge, I would say challenge, but it's a welcome one, is really helping all cities, large and small, recognize that nature-based solutions should be a part of their core climate work.
Yeah.
Not because we have to change that mindset that we just need to change light bulbs, right? As long as we change enough light bulbs, we'll deal with the climate crisis. So how we really think about resilience and really pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, the role that our natural surroundings have in the whole ecosystem of work. Once we're there, then what does that mean in terms of the work that you do? And that's where the accelerator has been really helpful in the larger cities. But now, if you look, you will see that a good number of cities, more and more every day, are starting to integrate nature-based solutions into their work. Hard part is if you're limited on number of staff that are already doing other things like energy efficiency, like where do I make space for this?
Right.
This kind of starts to bleed over into other departments' territory in terms of parks or open space or whatever. So we're just maturing that model a little bit, but I would say that a good number of communities are following suit, and we have a really good model to export.
It's great. It's great.
And a big thing that's interesting is kind of I guess when we think about flipping things, I'm working a lot more on the GSIS, the green stormwater infrastructure. Much of what we are considering benefits of nature-based solutions are what they consider co-benefits. And their mandate is water quality, so they do water quality work as they have to, as they should. And a lot of what we're promoting is co-beneficial, and we're trying to approach it from just two different ends and meet in the middle so they can come up with a way to work together.
When do you guys think you'll be ready to like do a workshop or like kind of present all this information to other cities?
You ready now?
And we've got a lot of information.
We did a presentation through Italy to other cities, Daniel and and I think there's been others too.
Yeah, it's sort of happened ad hoc in some ways.
You checked up the company Second Nature, do you know that?
I don't yet.
It's a company I worked with that does green infrastructure work for cities.
Nice.
Resource. Yeah, I saw it
Um,
right at one point, but I don't know if you saw it.
Anyway,
if you ever
need
need
it.
The founder lives in Santa Cruz, but
Okay.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate it. It's been an interesting adventure thus far, and it's a welcome challenge. I think it's a good way to put it. That's
Yeah.
good wording.
Okay, are we feeling? Any other discussion we wanna have on this topic, or are we feeling settled for the moment? Okay, thank you again so much for coming in and talking to us about it. Super informative, super interesting. So shall we move on to our last item, just checking in on our multi-board meeting that we're hosting in a week and a half? A week, great.
Night.
Yep,
So, yeah, I sent all the emails, invitations. I have heard back from most of the cities. I think there'll be decent turnout. I need to send you the list. But I've heard from like, a couple people from Longmont, one even in Littleton, Westminster and other, I wanna say like Larimer County even, coming, so I think we'll have a good turnout. And, yeah, I'll send you the updated list of the other people who are SVP. I'll probably send a reminder. I just send one tomorrow, yeah. I sent 2 last week, but, to the people who didn't answer yet, but, I should just bug them a little more. And, yeah, the main topic will be water. We have 2 speakers. And, yeah, I think it'll just be like a nice networking / information event.
Great.
Yeah. And hopefully, like talks like what you presented to us, ideas like people from different boards, maybe some staff can come to these events. We can like find some synergy between the different communities. And what you present maybe inspires some people from these boards to bring that back to their leaders,
Right.
to their councils, to their staff, and kind of start like things rolling in their own communities. It's kind of like the ultimate goal here.
That's similar to the printing.
Okay, glad to hear.
The question that I have for the board is, first of all, obviously logistics in terms of just RSVP, so we know how to order food. Just as a reminder, we'll be hosting it at the Junkyard Social Club out on East Pearl. Great location, it's gonna be super fun. But I'd love to just get a sense from the board of how you'd like the flow of that evening to go in terms of you are technically the hosts. How you'd like to handle kind of the opening remarks or a welcome, if you want to be a master of ceremonies in any way, kind of introducing, doing introductions. Do we want to set agenda that we set out to folks? So a little bit of that logistics and what support you need would be super helpful. What you would need from me, what you need from Heather. I was just hoping to start a little conversation so we can get that tracked down over the next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm interested in agenda.
Okay.
And I think like. Yeah, the main item of the agenda will be the 2 talks.
Mhm.
So, we should check like how long those talks should be. I'm guessing like 20 minutes.
That's what I told them. It's about 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 10 minutes for questions. So then we have about an hour there in talks.
Mhm.
And then we have maybe like a half an hour event for networking. I like what you suggested, like speed dating or something, like switching every 2 minutes and like so everybody has a chance to talk to everybody. I don't know what the place looks like, so I don't know how we could put that together, but I like that idea.
Yeah.
it's pretty big.
And then like but people will sit in front of each other and then just switch seats, like.
Oh, because it'll probably be set up for chairs.
Well, yeah, like I don't know. Will it just be chairs and there will be like a screen? That part, that part I don't know how it will look like.
Do you want to talk to the layout of the space?
Well, yeah, so, and we have the back
Of the back room.
the back room, so I mean, it's large-ish. My guess is that there'll be big tables, about the size of this, probably. Yeah, there'll be some big tables, so not really an opportunity to do like a bunch of chairs in the middle. It would be like some quick shoving tables aside and trying to set up a ring of, so I would maybe suggest that probably is gonna be a little bit tricky.
That seems logistically difficult.
Could be.
So if you want to make it work, I'm sure it could be doable, but.
I mean, there's another way to do it. I'm just curious, what you're aiming for is the ability for everybody to do a little share out of a thing or hear something. Because there's always like kind of the Ignite way to do something. There's a little low stage up front too, so you can say everybody, you get 2 minutes, or I don't know, just brainstorming. Again, another way to meet the objective.
Thought from my classroom days is there's something called an inner and outer circle where you have,
Mhm.
you know, two circles, one group of people standing in the middle facing out, and the circle
And then
of other
one
people
rotates,
facing in. And then you just have rotate
Yeah.
one.
I mean, we could do that, we have the chairs and stuff, we could do that, I think that will be, because I think like with the event in Superior, people were broken into tables.
Mhm.
So there wasn't a chance to like really interact with everybody and know what everybody is doing and who is everybody and what they're working on. And when in Brookfield was more like just a big table and we were just kind of all sitting kind of like this, but like, so it was even more difficult. So we'd like an opportunity for everybody to kind of, even if it's 2 minutes, you know, in a informal way to kind of rotate and kind of try to exchange business cards or get to know people, what they're working on and make those connections and maybe like two people who are interested in a specific topic, they can meet and they can like continue the conversation afterwards. So yeah, like if we could do 2 circles, I think that would be ideal.
I think 2 circles is a great idea, but if you're looking to get across group interaction, you're not gonna be able to do every permutation of 2 people interacting. Like, that's just not logistically feasible unless you wanted to like have a list of every single person and set up like interaction brackets, like that's not gonna happen. So having some kind of like small presentation, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I want to be working on, and then a sort of like 10, 20 minutes for brief presentations, brief shout outs for what people are working on, and then a like free form, like free for all intermingling, I think would be more effective for that kind of finding people who want to work on the same things and talk about the same things. Because if it's just that like inner outer circle, you're gonna have, everyone in the inner circle isn't gonna get to talk to each other. Right? So it's just gonna be like, everyone in the inner circle gets to talk to everyone in the outer circle, but that's not inter-circle. Right? Like it's a great way to do like getting to know each other in an environment like a classroom where you're going to be spending a lot of time together anyways. And so it's just like icebreakers with some of the people, right? But I don't think it's gonna be the best way to do it, like get everyone talking to the people that they want to share interests with.
I'm only gonna chime in, only because we've done a bunch of events at Junkyard specifically. And a thing that worked really well at an event I was just physically there for was that they called on like 5 people to be like sort of group leaders on specific topics. And I raised my hand, I was like, I want to talk to a group about what a resilient community looks like, I will be in that corner.
Yep.
And everyone who wanted to talk to me about that, which was like the whole group, which was awesome. Like went and sat in the comfy chairs in the corner, and then after 10 minutes, we flopped in. Like there were 5 more groups and we flopped around. And that worked really well, specifically in Junkyard's space. I don't know if that serves you at all, but that's something that just worked there. Yeah.
The other option, just thinking about that group and that first meeting that we could do, that's an interesting idea. We could do that. I feel like we wouldn't necessarily have people raising their hands who might have to create them in advance. But we could, rather than have the group decide what topic they want to talk about, we could just say, look, we're just going to break into whatever 6 tables and give them 3 prompts. It really is a connection space, right? I think that's the whole point. And the prompts are not like really deep dives. It's more like, who are you, where you're from, and in your community, like, what are you most excited about in your community? What stands in your way? I don't know what the prompts are. And then just like manage the flow and the conversation at the tables and do something that way. I don't know.
I like that idea. I think any more like talks, for now, talking. small group is definitely the way to go.
I don't know, because I like to switch the tables at least, like do a little.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah,
Like,
you could switch.
do it for
yeah,
like
sure.
5-10 minutes and then swap, and then also just have some open networking
Right.
canvas.
Yeah, it's not like you'd be locked to a table for the
Yeah.
moment that you sit down at one.
That's what we had in Superior, and that was like, at the end, it was kind of hard to.
Well, that's just
Oh,
a
really?
bad, that's a bad way to set up an event made for networking.
Well, I was the person, so it's like, you know.
Yeah, figuring it out, and look at
Um,
the spaces.
So it would have been nice, for example, that like to be able to switch tables and be like, okay, I'm gonna introduce myself, talk for a little bit, then I'm gonna move, or just listen and then go to another table and kind of
Yeah, or have like a
make my way.
landscaping table, a water table, like
I mean,
whatever.
could do that.
The themes that people want to talk about. And either one of those are good.
See, I'm glad I raised this question because I don't want to, I don't want to try to figure this out.
Yeah.
When we show
And
up.
then, yeah, like, who, unfortunately I can't go, but like, is there, like, are you starting it off and introducing the speaker, like, do you have?
Yeah, I guess I can take care of that, like I'll introduce. I guess I'll reintroduce a group of people and we what the meetings, you know, talk about the meeting we have had. This year and kind of how we have established a mission and a vision for the group and then. Yeah, I mean, just go ahead and introduce the speakers and get started. But really good for like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah,
Briefly,
remind me what day of the week it is?
Wednesday.
And then probably someone that's keeping an eye on time for speakers and groups and stuff.
There are people on that. Are you coming?
I will be able to be there for the beginning of it, I believe. But I will not be able to stay for the whole thing, so I'm happy to take part in the kickoff is like helping to kick off the event. You have done more work on setting it up, but I'm happy to do like a, hey, welcome to Boulder, thank you so much for coming to the event kind of thing. And then let you take care of.
Yeah, you can start like, why don't you do the welcome
Yeah, I can do
as
that.
a chair? And then I can take over and talk about like just the group and a little bit of background because there will be
Yeah.
people who are new.
Absolutely.
I mentioned, you know, what we have done, where we are, how we have established, you know, some
Absolutely.
mission for it. And then we can start with the talks.
Yeah, that-
And we should probably arrive early, I'm guessing, so we can set up the space. I can-
You're up there, right?
Do they give it to the city for free? Or do we have a budget? Nice. I also think we should have a plant-based food ordering, and I would be happy to help with that.
Yeah, we're waiting.
Oh, great.
We're gonna do vegetarian.
If you could help with that, that'd be awesome. We were just talking about that before the meeting, like, what we want.
Oh, great,
Yeah, let's talk after the meeting.
great. I recently went through all of the restaurants in Boulder and what their plant-based options are, so.
Every single restaurant?
No,
Okay.
but that list that the city uses.
Okay.
I want to one day.
Which one?
Just every single restaurant.
There's, I like, honestly, like Chipotle.
Really?
They have really good options. Yeah.
Logistics really quickly, do you know if, I'm assuming the speakers will have presentations.
Yes.
Do you happen to know what kind of tech Junkyard Social has in that back room? I know they have,
They have a screen, but you know, when you walk in, it's on the garage door. So if you want people facing the front, they have a microphone and all the audio stuff that you need, but you'll want to bring our big screen and projector if you want people facing to the back with the mural, yeah.
Let me check that.
And our screen just fits on that stage if you stack some books under one side.
Is there a chance to have like a virtual thing? I mean, I did get a couple of emails asking if it will be a virtual, and I was like, I don't think so, because I figured they wouldn't have the tech for that.
we do, I don't know how good of. I don't know how, if it's high enough quality to pick up the sound well in that space, but we do have a portable kind of desktop. Webcam with a speaker, we can try it, I can't guarantee that it'll be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we can try that, I guess, I don't. But we went to the
Those,
Superior
can I
meeting.
make a suggestion that maybe my preference would be to not try to manage that? It's not gonna be satisfactory, I don't think, and then they're not gonna be able to do any of the engagement piece. It's just for the presentations. We could try to record the presentations.
That
I'll be okay
that was
with that.
gonna be what I was gonna say, was like,
Yeah.
it would be worth recording the presentations, but those kind of mixed virtual things work just fine for a meeting like this, where it's a small group, we're like in a room together, but like having tried to participate in some events from a virtual, like it's fine to just sit there and watch the presentations, but you cannot interact in any kind of meaningful way. And it sounds like a hassle to set up. So,
Wait, do you guys go to 8?
Oh, yeah, I'm okay with that. I think, even as I was saying though, like, oh, it might discourage people from attending.
Yeah.
Yeah, the person, okay, so.
If my events thing gets done early, I'm gonna try to make it.
are we feeling?
Yeah.
Feeling ready to run this next week? Feeling excited?
Do we have name tags?
Yes.
Those kind of things?
Yeah, I think that's good, yeah. Did you have any, that's what people can like. People with stuff.
And did people RSVP?
Like a sign-up sheet?
you? Yes, and.
Sign-up sheet,
Say again?
a sign-up sheet. Sorry, what?
Oh, yeah, that's no RSVP.
Yeah.
You can send people a calendar invite to be helpful, like as a reminder.
Both, yeah.
Just the address and. Thank you. You can talk in, but if it's not on people's calendar, they don't.
That's like good.
know.
Yeah.
It's me.
5 million people.
Okay,
Okay,
so I guess my to-do list will be to send you the RSVP. Send a calendar reminder along with the agenda that we just discussed. As a reminder to people and encourage like people who are on the fence still.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Sounds
And
good.
then whether or not, if you just want to do a run a show, it's totally up to you all, just in terms of opening remarks. If you want people to like do, like stand up and introduce yourself and your name and where you're from. Probably opening remarks, there may be new people there that hadn't been, and a little bit of a history, third meeting. This is the intention of the group, but that's all you, so.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, or you, whatever.
I mean, I'm not the one who has the experience and.
How many people?
I don't know, I can count. I think more than 10,
More than 10 is a good goal.
at least, but I need to
The
count.
first, there was like 40-ish at the first.
Okay,
meeting.
that's what I thought I heard.
And the second one was, it was less, it was like maybe 30 or something.
Okay.
So I don't know,
So let's hope for not further decreasing numbers.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, the format's different a little bit too, because we have a topic and presenters,
Yes.
and so.
Yeah.
and the second one was like, I think they let us know like a week in advance or something like that, so
That's
it's
not
like,
enough heads up.
so for this one. Yeah, hopefully it's kind of like the first one.
We can do some prizes if you want.
Yeah.
We have.
Couple.
We have a couple.
What kind of prizes do you guys get?
We just gave a couple out at our departmental retreat, a really cool board game called Daybreak. It's a climate change
The punching board game.
board game.
It's,
It's really fun.
it's a surprisingly vibrant genre of board game.
I mean, it's fun.
I've not played that one in particular, but the genre of like climate change
Oh,
board
yeah.
game is like a
Yeah.
vibrant, growing.
It's from the maker of Pandemic, if you ever played that. Some people are.
Pandemic is fun.
Yeah,
I have
it's-
played Pandemic.
Maybe it's just the one.
But there's-
Huh?
Just saying out loud, council calendar is included under the calendar check.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to call it out separately on the agenda.
There's terraforming Mars, there's like photosynthesis, like there's a lot of like environmental.
Some really good ones.
Games out there. That's
Should
a
we do-
number of them.
So at the beginning, should we do like 15 minutes for eating? Like, because the event starts at 6, right? So people will arrive around 6, we do 15, 20 minutes for eating, or should we just go straight into like people eat
I
the
would
same?
do time for like people to arrive. like,
Yeah,
wait
it's
to
like
start.
10, the way that I think a good event goes is you give like 10 to 15 minutes that's like mingling at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you do like mixed opening remarks and eating and presentations. And then you go into your socialization. So yeah, like start doing remarks at like 6:10, 6:15. don't set that as a hard line, but as a like. As a like this, yeah. Yeah, and then you don't have to have everyone there to start. But. Okay, definitely gives some like, it's not we start at 6 p.m. on the dot, that's.
Yeah. And definitely time that speaker, I don't know these speakers, but people just tend to talk over for a lot of times.
Well, Russ, I don't think will, because he's got another event that night. Yeah.
That was always helpful.
Inverse maybe.
And we had a speaker from the utilities.
Correct. Or water utilities. Who's?
Okay. And.
HUTT.
Okay.
And if there's any like opening remarks with respect to like, if we need a table to welcome people, I think people can get drinks there. There's a bar, it's open, not an open bar, sorry.
An open bar,
Yeah.
free drinks, oh my goodness.
That's what really attracts people.
But tell people they're in the restroom, here's what we're gonna do, go ahead and grab some food, all that stuff. I mean, I'm happy to jump in and do whatever you need.
Cool.
Let's have the event next to an open bar event
Mm,
and. Just thought we had an open bar.
That's.
That right back in.
This one.
Can we take if you can, the council upcoming agenda?
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
that's my cue.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So see, a good number of things I want to just flag for you that we have a pretty full agenda at your December meeting. I think we are coming back for the roadmap discussion, looking at you. Do we have the roadmap on December?
Confirm, but we do have the cap update.
Okay, it's fine if we don't, but we do want to bring back that building roadmap discussion for the next steps. But most importantly, want to be giving you all an update on the climate action plan update. We'll be going to council December 15th, and we'll make sure that we come to you and talk about the structure and format. I gave you a brief update a couple of months ago that it's not a big substantive change. It really is structural, some format, some new goals around resilience and equity. Want to talk a little bit more about the resilience elements, but our session in December is really to check in with council on, is this the structure and layout? Are there pieces that you think need to be incorporated before we start working towards finalizing that document? So that's really where we're at, but I would like to talk to the board about that and getting input that you have in advance. So that's December. If you look at the agenda, so then our council meeting is December 19th. There is the landscape updates, wildfire hardening piece. It's going to be on December 12th. But as I mentioned a little bit ago, I've already pinged the team to get on your calendar to talk about any recommendations that are going to be made coming out of that. The landscape code ordinance is going to happen next year. So this is just kind of a tee up to talk about what the landscape ordinance contains, let council talk about, what do we really want to accomplish with this update? And then to get on your calendar to make sure that we're starting to address all the parts and pieces that are going to be important to you. So that one you'll see coming to you. The other things that I just wanted to flag as potentials, if you look at the anticipated upcoming council items in the last page, in Q1, we will have a manufactured home strategy that obviously links to our building roadmap. And then I mentioned before that you may have an interest in the AMPS update. So just thinking about parking issues, if that's something that the board would like to see, I'd like to get that direction so I can get that on your calendar as well. And then I also thought it would be really helpful. We do have a racial equity update being planned because that's such a key part of what we do as a city and how it really integrates into a lot of our programming and policies. I wanted to throw that out there to see if the board had an interest in getting an update on our racial equity work.
Yeah, I think both of those would be great to hear some more about. I think my very first meeting with the EAB was about AMPS.
Was.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. But yeah, no, it would be great to hear about both of those. In whatever capacity is applicable to us.
And then, of course, any of the other items that you see on there, if you express interest and the board would like to see an update.
Yeah,
Presentation.
I'm looking at it, sorry, you go ahead.
I don't know when, where, but I am curious, like this new building, yeah, like sustainability plans for, like, it was, amazing taking it down, I just haven't heard much about what will be going up. Just curious.
Sure.
That's planets involved.
And I'm not sure if the like staff dealing with them are overlapping at all, but like AMPS and Vision Zero, I think would like align fairly well and do like a paired update. But I don't know how much staff overlap there is between the two projects. So I don't know how feasible that would be.
Not a lot, but that's okay. Doesn't matter.
I think that those are connected and important towards reducing driving mileage in the city.
Okay. Great. Aaron, we just talked about the anticipated upcoming items, and there is interest in seeing a presentation on, you will get one on our manufactured home strategy and update on the building roadmap. There was just interest in an AMPS update and a Vision Zero, racial equity more broadly, and then Alpine Balsam, just the plans for the kind of, yeah, the form and function of the building. So we have a lot to share on that. It's pretty
Oh,
great.
cool,
Yeah.
great, yeah, I figured, I just had no idea. Plus, you know, gotta get that co-working space in there.
When, we can mention the landscape, is that also coming up or?
Yeah, so I mentioned just as you're walking out, December 12th is the first discussion with council, but it's really a presentation with them about what the landscaping ordinance is about, how they're thinking about using it as a wildfire opportunity. And then I've already pinged that group to be prepared to come to the board as I start formulating specific recommendations.
Probably next year.
Yeah, okay, probably Q1, yeah.
And is December your last month?
I think my last meeting would be February, right?
Like of a 5-year term?
I only got, I got
Three.
what was left of, I forget who it was, but yeah, I only have a 3-year seat. So this is my last, whatever your last meeting is, my last meeting as well.
Wait, yearly?
No,
Right?
I think about a year.
Okay, well, maybe I'm just,
Be here forever.
maybe I'm just special.
Everyone's gonna be gone.
Heather just brought this up today, so I know she's got some data point on it, always.
So yeah, Brooke, you're the only one whose term is ending. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the details. Looks like the recruitment process will be done in February, so I would assume either February or March will be your next meeting.
All right.
What's the missing? Is there some sort of policy there to miss so many meetings?
It's a good question. So we can resend out your charter. Typically,
You know, it's me, sorry.
yeah, happy to. And so typically you're provided to unexcused absences, but excused means just to let the board chair or let the rest of your colleagues know that you're not able to make it. The good thing is
It's like a
that,
doctor's note.
yeah, precisely. So
Okay.
obviously it's not a hard and firm thing.
Okay.
When it is really helpful when you all are, I mean, obviously decisions like approving minutes is something you need to do with the quorum, but generally with a 5-member board, it's manageable.
Okay, I too am having twins. There's something in the,
I said it, it's something in our plant-based diet. Right? Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me?
What are the odds? The odds seem really low.
They're both identical boys, both
Oh,
of
wow.
us.
Are you?
Oh my goodness, again, the odds seem
Very low.
really low.
Yeah, I brought her some food and she looked,
Is she doing it?
yeah, I was like, are you sure you just had 2 babies? That's great.
That's good to hear.
Anyway, so watch out,
Okay.
something about this board.
Right.
Anyway, hopefully I won't be gone too long.
You'll hold your
Preparing for
Many
it.
times, I think it's like yes.
What do you do?
Mid-March.
It's a pretty good time of year to be born.
Is that your birthday? We'll see, hopefully. Twins. Well, unpredictable apparently, but. We'll see.
Alright. Are we feeling satisfied for meeting? Anyone have anything they wanna bring forward before we wrap up for the night? No, feeling good? In that case, I will make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Second.
Cool, all those in favor? That being unanimous, that will conclude our meeting for the night. Thank you very much.